Oh, okay. Yeah, that's more recent. Look at that. Bobby Gill. Absolutely. Classic. When was that?
2010.
Yeah, so we're talking about that 14 years. It's a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my brother there. I used to work with him back in 1900s. I'll show you a picture I got before we get out of here. I'll show you a classic picture of, of his world. Interviewed him, of course, millions of times on the show. And most of what you see here is his collection. His son is here as well. His son lives here. Oh yeah. There was Kumar. Yeah, every year on his birthday, we do a tribute to Gil. Since his transition, in fact, Gil gave me the gift to his son that he was here, because nobody knew he was here. And ever since then, we've been doing it on April 1st. It's when his birthday is. We do a tribute to him. Lifetime tribute. Stand by. To live and be out, down, out. How? Absolutely. Listener sponsored and supported community radio. 89.3 FM, WRFG.org. Of course, nothing like an opening. What about Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson? From the It's Your World LP. You remember those? Of course, the title track we just played, of course, live. Giving thanks for all life and all that belongs to us, and knowing that we are truly free. It is our world, and we have to reclaim it in the ways that we know to by activating that which allows us to be very participatory in building a new world. And we give thanks for the likes of Bubba Gill, Scott Henry, and of course Brian Jackson. And as always, we have a enlightening program for us as we go through these transitions and we move ourselves into a space of more functionality and take everything as it comes as being part of the growth edges of growth process. We continue to know that there's so many things that we have access to that we take for granted, and things that are available to us that we don't truly put into perspective where we can utilize for the purposes of maintaining our stay here on this planet. There's many ways to get out of here, and many ways that we can avoid being here while we're here through the suppression of our gifts and talents and not allowing ourselves to really truly take full responsibility for who we are. And it's an ongoing, as they say, work in progress, or a whip, as it were. And with that being stated, there's so much that needs to happen in terms of documentation and getting things on the record and make sure we maintain that which is sacred to us in spite of what may be said or what may be alleged or maybe assumed. If you have it on the record, you have what they call now, and in the contemporary way they call it receipts, having the receipts, is the tangibles of what could be utilized. And I say that's one of the things that I really pride myself of being on Map Time for the length of time that I have been on, providing you access to that which you may have thought wasn't there. Love to hear those of you your Columbus moment to discover, which is already there. Not to thief it, like you say, from the island, not to thief it, or not to claim it, not to act as if it was yours because you discovered it, but to uncover and to recover, so we can be able to make ourselves stay in the space of our ancestors, very, very focused. And with that being stated, the best thing we can have is oxygen, right? And in this case, we're talking about fresh air. Fresh Aire Network podcast studios is another encounter that I have had the honor of interacting with, and really seeing the level of passion that comes with that, and the appreciation for that which is one's skill set. And here in the building of Little Five Points Community Center, there are many who come and many who go, and many who stay, who've been here for the long haul, as I have, or been here relative to the station WRFG. And the most recent encounter was a great brother, good brother, by the name of Kevan Ware. And he is fully enmeshed in entrepreneurship, in media, and just all out creative thinking and creative makings of that which is the imagery of our sojourn, and he does it in a visual way through video or videography. And we had a discussion. I said, well, I think it's important for you to come in and talk to the people, and talk to the community. And he was willing to do so, being one of the tenants here in the building. And of course, as everything is in order, nothing happens by chance. Everything is nothing happenstance. We were able to really bond on a few things that we have familiarity with. And of course, the needs of what we require always comes to us. You have to pay attention when it shows up. So I want to welcome my brother Kevan Ware to the studios of WRFG and to Map Time. Hey, brother.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome, man. Thanks for me having you, and thanks for having me have you.
Appreciate it.
I know that we tend to have a lot going on, and it's not a bad thing to have things going on if you put them in order, put them in perspective, and of course make them functional. Mm-hmm. And in this case, your level of entrepreneurship and your level of creativity is really admirable. So why not start out like that? Tell us who you are, what you embark upon, the fact that you came in, with the fluidity of the moon, as the red moon, as you uncovered.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. The magnetic moon, because you're rooted in purpose, cosmic moons, and also we have the gateway for what is happening too. So I really am honored to be able to have that level of purification that you bring forth in your work. So tell us about yourself. Tell us where it all started for you, or began for you, and how it got you to where you are right now.
Well, besides being Brenda Ware's son and Evelina Etheridge, my grandmother, and my mom, I'm from Chicago, born and raised, and I'm up there in age, so I've seen some things in my time in Chicago, and it was a rich time to even be a part of this world while I was in Chicago. And to make a long story short, I grew up in Chicago, born and raised, went to school, industrial electronics, electrical engineering, did that for a while, got out, came to Atlanta for a hot second, and then actually signed up for the Army. Did the Army for about 4 years, did some tactical ballistic missiles. The Patriots did some dope to the war in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I used to fix those and operate them, obviously in 1996. My whole point is that after I did that, I came back to Chicago and worked for a Fortune 500 company in fiber optics. And in August 20th, 2002, I fired my boss. Mm-hmm. And what that meant was that I got a chance to make some steps in my life that I didn't know that was important, but at the same time, it was written. And what that means was I started to become an entrepreneur, and there was no blueprint. And this blueprint of being in Chicago, brown male, and at that time, I wanted to succeed, but I also wanted to help other people while they were succeeding. So I started a lifestyle consulting firm 22 years ago. And that's basically, I live those lifestyles that I was just telling you about. I've been in the Army. I know what the armed forces is. I know what it is to be in corporate world. Now I know how it is to be an entrepreneur. The only two things I haven't done is I wasn't a trust baby, and I definitely haven't retired quite yet. So what that meant was is that as I went through those phases of my life, I found out that I was ignorant in all of those phases of my life. So I created a consulting firm that actually addresses some of those challenges. And as I started addressing those challenges, I just evolved to doing networking events, bringing folks together, finding out that we had a story to tell, meaning my fellow entrepreneurs out there and fellow brothers and sisters, nobody told us that we were important enough to do our own thing. So with all that going down, I decided to want to document those kind of experiences. So they call me Mr. Documentarian. And all that means was that after a while, I seen how the system of entrepreneurship was not necessarily readily available to people. I decided to create my own. And the businesses that I have and the experiences from Chicago and the Army and even Atlanta has given me the opportunity to hopefully give some people fresh air. The air is fresh, A-I-R-E. We do believe that we are building and maintaining millionaires and billionaires, and everybody needs some fresh air. So what all that meant was is that it doesn't matter if I was in the armed services or in corporate world or entrepreneur. I want to be around like-minded individuals that fed me, and I can create my own environment, and it can be consistent. And with all that being said, that's good and dandy for me to say this right now, but if we're not documenting it, then I can't show our children what the possibilities they could be to do this, and then show them and visually, through pictures, through video, through TV, which they're understanding of with their cell phone. So in short, I took my lifestyle and came up with a systematic way of how I would be an entrepreneur, and then decided to teach other people as they're doing it. And the video part is, and the media part is just the evolution of me knowing that when I meet people, even like you, Wanique sitting up here, so humble, but there's always a story behind each and every individual. And I think that story is important when you start in a business, because people do business with people they know, love, and trust, as they say. So how do you shorten the gap, if you will, of two people meeting and being vetted, and also being associated with somebody that you respect? And I felt like podcast was the avenue in which not only do I do the networking events, but also before we do network events, how long we showcase the people that's at the event prior to it, so people can get an idea of who they are, what their energy is, what their tone is, if they know what they're talking about. So it all kind of balled into showcasing.
And spotlighting.
Yes, yes, sir.
And highlighting.
And documenting.
And documenting, yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's very commendable. I think that's important that you make a good point. This is Maritime Jazz, WRFG 89.3 FM Night Watch programming, and we are in the studio with Brother Kevan Ware of Fresh Aire Network podcast studios. You said a few things, and I wanted to let you go ahead and walk that walk, because I think there's so many things that's so important about what structured you into what you are now, particularly when you talk about going into the military. And some people may have issues and shy away from that, but given what it's representing, but there's a discipline that comes with that, and then you also learn tactical strategies, and also learn how to build something that may well come in handy. And oftentimes we don't view it as that because we're looking at something based on a career or something that's helping us through a survival moment, trying to maintain what we have.
Correct.
But as we look at our lives, like I said, it's your world, and you build it as you go. A lot more of that is, indicative of the fact, of bridging world, as I tend to do so well, and to bridge those, who have the capacity to do so. In the event of self-restructuring and putting the bridge into perspective, because the bridge can be wear and tear, with no pun on your name. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that need to happen to allow for you to really get the idea, because people will utilize the opportunity to be crossed over or to go through from one side to the next. Across the bridge, it's like it really becomes a true friend to the traveler when you need to get over, troubled water or terrain that may be somewhat traverse to navigate. But I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your beginning. You said you were born in Chicago and you made your way to Atlanta. I don't think I heard how you got to Atlanta, but I think that's also a part of your navigating life path. How did you get what I'm being to coming to Atlanta? And how long were you in Chicago before you left there?
So I was in Chicago until I was 21. So I worked at my church for 17 years. Shout out to St. Margaret's College. And I was altar boy. I did a bunch of things in Chicago. I played basketball. Really grew up in a rich community and society and culture that I don't want to bypass and not give it just due, because it did make me who I am, which bridged me when I did go into the Army. I got to Atlanta because my brother lived here prior. He had went to the Army, had been in the Army 12 years, was stationed at Fort McPherson, which was his last duty station. And then he ended up staying here because my cousin was here. And then I graduated and got a new job and was making a bunch of money, and they had that last hire, first fire piece. And at that point I hadn't been anywhere because I had been in school, couldn't leave any place. So my brother was like, well, why don't you come down to Atlanta and, have a little vacation? So you know what that meant. I came down here for a week, and then 2 weeks.
It was a wrap, right? Yeah.
And then my cousin and him double teamed me. I was like, man, why don't you just come down here? And
Yeah.
So I went back to Chicago. I had just moved into my first place. So I've been there almost a year. Shout out to my guy who gave me my first place, Thomas Barnes. So came back. Told my mom I was moving, packed my stuff up in the U-Haul, and just came down. Ended up hanging out with my brother, because this was the first time me and my brother had hung out or been in the same continent, because he had been in the Army and we were real close.
How many siblings are there, and where you are?
So it's two of us. I'm the youngest.
Oh, okay. So
and he's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
So we were close, meaning growing up, Boy Scout, Cub Scouts, skateboard, basketball, girls, house music, parties, all of that good stuff.
All the rites of passage.
Yeah. That's my point about being in Chicago at that time and being rich, and understanding afterwards.
And cold.
Yeah, which is why I'm here now.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that when you said that in terms of the climate change. That was very luring. Luring. As I came from New York, the same
True.
Level of seasons and the chill of winter is. Really,
it's a classic case is that you don't know what you're missing because you don't know any better.
You don't know it exists.
No.
Right.
But I ain't gonna say wasted. That's not what I'm saying. Had I knew what I knew now, and how my spirit is when the sun is out and it's nice out, and being an entrepreneur, you get more things done in a day's time, in a season's time, because it's warmer outside. So, it's part of my journey. I appreciate it. So I left there, came here, and worked for like 3, 4, 5 companies when I was here, and got burnt out. I did everything from selling satellites on the phone, because I had the engineering background. I did a couple of engineering jobs, and they had me going all over the place. And I didn't like it because I was a city boy. and all of the driving that I was doing, and yeah, we get programmed when you live in those big cities, because if you want to go somewhere, you can do 18 things in one day, as opposed to when you're here at that point. I was in 94. So everything was so spaced out. And the reason why I came down was to hang out with my brother. And we was working so much that we never even seen each other. We would see each other in passing. And so I decided I was a pretty good basketball player. So I was like, I'll go to basketball, go to Army, play some basketball. And I called my mom, told my brother. My brother was like, yeah, go ahead. And I went into the Army. And that's when they heard about my background. That's what the missiles and all that kind of stuff came in. And yeah, I had a delayed entry, so I went back to Chicago for that what, I think it was like 67 days. It was the best time of my life. It was amazing.
So far.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the best is yet to come.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
At that point, I thought it was the best time of my life. Yeah. So and this, excuse me for, sure.
Because I really want to unpack that a little bit, because I think that when we look at that in retrospect, we begin to appreciate what it represented, and sometimes when we're in it, we don't have an appreciation for it because we're in too deep or we're up too close, right? But when we move through it and survive it, so to speak, and come past it and look back and say, oh, okay, now that was what that was for. That's why I'm able to do this in a certain kind of way that I'm currently engaged or involved in, right? Because energy always transfers over or transcends everything. There is a level of apathy that comes sometimes with our feeling that the world around us is closing in on us, or we deal with the catechism or isms of what the world has been structured for those in the matrix, and how it governs your appearance is everything, how you look, what you represent in terms of your tonation or your phenotype, and who you represent in the larger scheme of things. And so you have to now work through that, particularly as you're going through their systems that they have set up, and you have to work through their systems and adjust yourself accordingly and realize that you can master all of it, because without your level of existence, none of it would exist anyway, on a real note.
Yeah.
So we go back and we get the training that we require. But I think when you say you find yourself, I think it's more, I had curiosity that allowed you to make those decisions, because you wanted to make yourself a continual, ongoing influence on the world that you were creating, because you're very creative, you're based on creation. I heard you mention your mother, and if I may ask, did your father factor into any of this, and did you have a sense of relationship with him to give you a sense of why you may be doing things in the way you are in the masculine sense?
So I must apologize to my father for not bringing him up, and so many times because your mom and my grandmother were so close to me and every day.
Well, they nurture us, they cultivate us, so
I
get that, yeah.
My point being is that I'm glad you brought that up, is my father and I are super close because he was the individuals that introduced me to music. And I'm laughing right now because my dad would be downstairs in the basement with all his records. He played the saxophone and the flute too. And he would just be playing his music, and I can always remember being downstairs dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing. And I used to do this dance, and anybody that's in my family, when they hear this, they start laughing. And he would just cheer me on, like, go band, that's my nickname, go band, go band. My point is that my father taught me about having space and time to himself, and when he did that, he chose music as his therapy.
It's still a way,
Yeah. So with all that being said, my father and my mom divorced when I was, 4 or 5, I can't remember. But he always picked us up on weekends. He was a CTA bus driver with Chicago Transit Authority for 47 years.
Wow.
Right. We used to be on the bus with him. Everybody in Chicago know about the 9 when he was on 79th Street bus and the Cottage Grove bus. So, and he was well loved. He was the first person that we would go down to where he worked, which was always great because you go into the barn, they used to call it barn, and you see all these guys with the same uniform on, they playing ping pong and talking stuff, and his name is Sherman, so they would call him Sherm. Like, hey, what's up, Sherm? Oh, you got your bodyguards with you, right? It'll be me and my brother. And I say that because that's the first time that you are in the public and you see how
socialization happens,
and
right?
how the public view your father.
And that's how you get your sense of appreciation, or lack thereof, of what he represents in the larger body of the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like, man, this dude is well loved, and he had names for everybody, you know. So, and then he would always take us with him to play darts and pool. He taught me that stuff, that how to be a male and get along, and even the fact that we had nicknames, and you like Hamburger, dude named Hamburger. And you ask him why you, that camaraderie of being around other men and being well loved and doing the best he could at that point in time, because I found out afterwards, back to your point, what my father really went through prior to him and my mom, and when they broke up, and you really never knew. But that's my guy. That's all I'm saying.
That's a beautiful homage or an assessment of yourself. You see, because I heard you talk about how your maternal side, or your, if you will, your feminine self, you know, in terms of that which was contributed to you by your mother, and that's always the first thing, because that's the first nurture, that's the first shaper of our existence, energy-wise. But then there's the other part of what is molding us into what we are, and even in the absence, you know, because we have to now think about what it is, the first images that we have to look at what we represent in the masculine form. And I think it's really a powerful testimony to your level of appreciation, like you said, when we come up into these spaces, to really truly have a image that we can look at, and we can point to, or we can reference. It helps us tremendously.
Absolutely.
But I also say, and I say but for good reason, not to change everything I said, but to make sure that people are clear about the perfection of our destiny and our life path, is always giving us an opportunity to overcome obstacles and to surpass the things that we think we're missing. And one of the things that you said, it was key, the last part of your statement, or your level of tribute to your father and his representation, was that you learned and came to appreciate who he was and what they were together and what their reasoning and why they chose to divide the force, or what they call divorce, right? Divide the force and say, okay, y'all, now we, you know, it really, sometimes we try to make it as a fluke that could be different if it was different, but if it's not, then you can't make it up. You can't pretend how it would be if that was something, because that puts us in a position where we feel that we're flawed and we feel that we're, you know, inadequate, or we're inept.
Yeah.
You know? And we start thinking that, oh, if I had my father, I would be different. I'm saying that may be true in some instances, but I'm not saying that's not the wherewithal of your existence, because you chose, and this gets kind of mystical when we start speaking about these things relative to choice and how we incarnated and why we chose the parents that we have and why they chose us, and the agreement that we have to live out and fulfill some legacy, whether it be a bloodline or a genome of what we represent. But I think that the compassion I hear come from you around what could have been easily a judgment of resentment, or a feeling of abandonment, or a feeling, even though he was present in the moments that he was, if you say weekends or whatever, but that level of maturity that comes into, oh, wait a minute now, I can just be one way or the other. I have choices here, and the choices, I can be totally in a situation where I use that as a basis for my lack of activity, lack of development, lack of functionality, or lack of achievement or progress, and say, he taught me what not to do, as opposed to what he taught me to do, right? And gave me the opportunity to say, okay, this is not the way you want to do it, and do it in a way that is very much appropriate for your level of interactivity with others or with the world. And that gives you a sense of relief, because your chemistry of that thought, because all thought is chemistry, about him or her, keeps you in a very healthy state, or a very fluid state. Because when we start thinking about things in a negative, and thinking about what we think we should be based on the world standards or whatever, we begin to start have this self-directed hatred, anger, resentment that inhibits us. And then we become dysfunctional. Then we get locked in those cells, right, of dysfunction. So I think that why I like to have those kind of conversations when I'm having interaction with persons of your type, like, is to really make sure that you have that conversation with yourself, and to ask about it, and then work through it, because the success or the achievement that we have really relies on it. And I can say that about my father too, because I watched him as being a pillar in the community. And, he served in the Korean War and told me some great stories about understanding who North Korea was and South Korea was, and I'll get confused about what you see, and how he was preserved by a Korean soldier who didn't take him out while discovering him in a foxhole where he was literally on top of his army buddy who had been killed. And he was sitting in there for weeks on end. And then when he finally got discovered by the North Korean army, he was preserved. They asked him a question. I think this was a very popular question back then in that time, 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, as to why you're here. This is not your war. Mm-hmm. Why are you fighting for a country or a place that doesn't really regard you as anything but a pawn, whatever. And of course, I'm paraphrasing what you told me. And instead of taking him out, made him a POW. And I say that proudly because I wouldn't be here had he not. So I got to appreciate that story.
Exactly.
And so I'm saying to you that that's part of, when we become and humanize our parents and really truly trust that everything that we do will have an effect eventually, right? Mm-hmm. But we're going to take another quick recess and going back with Kevan Ware, who's from the Fresh Aire Network podcast studios, and we're going to talk more about that level of creation, creativity. I think it's really important for us to have a sense of appreciation to the degree that we can really speak to it more readily. And I think that, the conversation is doing well. And I'm also very proud to have you here, bro.
Thank you.
It's a great conversation.
We're ready.
Absolutely.